Hello and welcome to the Primary PE Huddle Podcast, brought to you by Aspire Active Education. Aspire Active Education is a passionate family who all believe that PE, sport and physical activity are essential for children to develop a love of healthy living and to end physical inactivity forever. We've proven that working in collaboration with school leadership teams, PE subject leaders, teachers and all PE practitioners positively impacts the sustainability of schools embedding a powerful physical curriculum and essentially helps more children be more active more often. Our mission is to engage 1 million children in physical activity by 2025, and we hope this podcast brings others along our journey with us. Through this podcast series, we aim to discover the power behind PE, school sport and physical activity, specifically in primary schools, the impact this has on the whole school, the impact it has on pupils' holistic development, and the secrets behind the successful implementation of a powerful physical curriculum. This is what makes up the Primary PE Huddle. We won't be alone through this journey. We're joined by PE subject leaders, school and academy senior leadership teams, experts in the field of primary education, and representatives of key sector bodies, who all share what physical activity means to them, how they use it as a tool to positively impact children and young people, and what they believe in the Primary PE Huddle. Our guests perform a deep dive on topics such as creating sustainable high quality PE, the benefits of physical activity, a top-down collaboration to embed a physically active ethos, and sharing of best practice from their own experiences to create an enthusiastic culture towards a healthy and active lifestyle. If you like what you hear, please leave us a review and subscribe wherever you get your pods.
Hi there, it's Paul from the Primary PE Huddle, and I am here today with Hannah Davis from Glenmead Primary School, and thank you so much for agreeing to be part of this Primary PE Huddle podcast as our featured guest. Now, we're at the end of the academic year, so I understand that everyone's super tired and super busy, already getting ready for the new academic year. But just for those new listeners and those that are, continuing to listen to all of our series and all of our episodes. Now, this podcast refers to what PE subject leaders and industry experts and organisations in our industry need to do to combat physical inactivity in schools, bringing PE, school sports and physical activity to the forefront of children and young people's educational journeys. During the podcast today, we're going to explore what physical activity means to you and the importance you feel it has, subject leadership tips from a range of SLT perspectives, and potentially how we can get more children more active more often. So lots to talk about, and I'm sure we'll move on to many different things during our little chat here today. So Hannah, I briefly obviously introed you at the start. Again, thank you for being with me today. For those listeners that aren't aware or who Glenmead Primary School are or your position here at the school, could you do like a little bio, a little intro of who you are?
Yes, so my name is Hannah Davis. I am the PE subject lead at Glenmead and a class teacher in year 3 as well.
How long have you been here at Glenmead?
4 years, so it will be my 5th class in September.
So always a combo of PE and teacher?
No, so when I first started, I was an NQT. Mm-hmm. I don't call it that anymore.
No,
yeah, but so you don't really have a subject then. So I think I inherited PE about after my first year. Yeah. It was at some point during my 2nd year here to take on that responsibility, and that sort of it went well with my degree because my degree was sport and physical education.
Okay, so
combined,
it's a good match
combined with childhood and youth studies. It was like a joint degree. So, and there was the gap at our school really for a PE lead. So that's how it felt to me.
So how did you feel then with that experience behind you in terms of all your other educational aspects around sport that, you know, when the deputy head or the head teacher said, look, can you take PE on? Was that sort of, no problem, I've got this, or were you still quite nervous about it?
I think because of where I was at in my career, it being like my initial first 2 years of teaching, I was a bit like apprehensive. but I'd never led a subject before in general. So it wasn't so much the fact that it was PE, like specifically, that was worrying me. It was more just taking on a subject role in general, really, and like not knowing whether I was ready for that, as well as teaching in a classroom. But everybody has to, we all have to take a role on eventually. So I just thought, you know what,
So you
we'll
got your
just
first year of teaching under your belt being NQT at the time. So you're post NQT, and you say, right, we've now got a subject to have, as well as dual being a teacher as well. So, your priority level suddenly was like, okay, now I've got both sides to cover as well.
Yeah.
Well, when you had that, and one of the questions I like to ask is when you were on that post NQT role, your second year into teaching, looking back at that, and you had the PE. Could you name anything in which you'd known before becoming subject lead on PE? Sort of anything you thought, oh, didn't realise that?
Yeah, so probably not all children are going to love PE. I think in a primary school you kind of expect children to really like it because they love playing outside. Really, like most children enjoy that sort of aspect of primary school. The physical activity outside at break times and lunch times and things. But when you've got a full class and you're monitoring PE for the whole school, not all children are going to feel the same about a subject, and that could be any other subject too, but PE is one of those. So it's just about boosting it really, for everybody, trying to raise the profile for even those children who aren't necessarily particularly excited by PE, because there'll always be some children who prefer something else. But so like thinking about how you can encourage everybody, no matter like what their preferences are in school, what their favourite subjects are, because I think you might have a perception that everybody's going to love something, but they actually don't.
Yeah. That's hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got to change that, almost that Titanic ship around.
Yeah,
to bring
for
it
some
around.
children, yeah.
Okay. So, you're 4 years in now?
Yeah.
4 years in?
Yeah.
3 years of that leading on PE?
Yes.
A little bit, so if my math is correct at the end of the day. How much importance do you put on PE across the school?
I think I had to come in just kind of refreshing things a little bit, and it was a good opportunity to implement new things, new initiatives. So I would say I hold it very important. It's so important in the curriculum. I would have that vision myself. So it's just about making sure everybody else has got that vision. So through things like CPD, staff meetings, and anything that I want to be happening, making sure that it is happening. And staff will really cooperate with that. Like, everybody's a team in a school. So if you as a subject leader requesting that something happens, whether it's a weekly competition in a certain area like skipping or running, anything like that, it's just making sure that it is happening. So definitely like raising the profile. We've had to do that. So I would say that everybody now shares that same opinion, that it is really important, and our children do really, on the whole. Once you sort of raise the profile of something and make it exciting, I feel like the children really get on board with that. So as long as that's happening, and things are new things are happening all the time, that element of competitions here. It might be new, like visitors coming into school to do physical activity with the children. As I've mentioned previously, like weekly competitions, certificates being shared, even like staff versus children, things like that, that we might run termly. It's just, so making sure everybody's on board with it, really.
And you mentioned everyone on board. There's a couple of angles I want to kind of attack here. And you've got so much going on here, which sounds amazing. And the fact that not only all the teachers seem on board with it, which is a real big plus, because you can get a lot of teachers that, for different reasons are stuck in their ways, and they go, no, I don't want to do it. They might have had previous bad experiences as children as PE, and that might have, encased them on their attitudes now, and obviously the children are all for it as well. You mentioned your PE vision, so how did you create that ethos of everyone together? And included with your PE vision? Like, did you say, well, this is my vision, this is where it's displayed, everyone needs to get on board, this is what it's about? How have you made kind of this particular ethos at the school, like one for all and all for one sort of thing?
I think I would say so making sure that everything is consistent, to be honest, in all subjects. So we've all had to think about what our intent is for the curriculum and how we're implementing it, and that has to be shared with all staff. So likewise with PE, as history or geography, we've had the opportunity to personalise that up to what we would like, but then share it with staff, and that's obviously on the website then for parents, any visitors to see. So it's just like making sure that all staff are aware that this is what we want to happen. But I'd say I channeled out as on the national curriculum really what the aims are in the UK for children in PE, and we just want to ensure that we're doing all of those things. So making sure children enjoy PE, but making sure that they are physically active, making sure they go on to make the right choices, healthy choices, lead physically active lifestyles. They have the opportunity to compete in competitions. It was just, I really pulled all things from there and strived at Glenmead to make sure that we're all singing from that hymn sheet. That's our intent, and that we're all hoping to achieve that, everybody. So we would share those at like staff meetings. Weekly we have a briefing where I might say, next week we're going to really focus on skipping. Can we all get the skipping ropes back out? We want to know how many skips, who can do the most skips in 1 minute. That's the weekly competition this week. So it's just in those meetings, whenever I get the chance to speak to staff, making sure that they know how we're doing it, and they're part of it as well. I think they're actually doing it with their class. It's not too distant then, I don't think. It's like making sure that everybody's doing it like almost with you, because I don't think it's all down to you.
No.
As I say, everybody's a team, so anything that a subject lead asks, you've got to support them by doing that, and everybody then is singing from the same hymn sheet.
It's a team effort by the sounds of it, and it's not just a one-person show with any subject. I know we're talking about PE today, and so with that support, obviously with your teachers, I know yourself and the school very well, and you have a lot of support with you with the higher ranks, shall we say, in the school, from the deputy head and things like that. So you work alongside the deputy head very well with this. And can you give any tips for other PE subject leads and maybe head teachers and other SLT about how that collaboration comes about and how you work together, maybe different methods, different ways you go about things? Do you kind of take responsibilities each? Do you kind of help each other in some ways? How do you have that network? What does that network look like when you are leading from the front?
I think it's so good to have, to be honest, somebody, whether even if it's not a deputy head or just somebody in school, even if it's another teacher who maybe leads their subject, but just somebody who you could approach in saying, I've got this idea, what do you think? But we're lucky, I suppose, because our deputy head oversees all of curriculum, like wider curriculum. So we naturally would go to her with anything that is related to our subject. And it helps me as well, because I would struggle, I'd say I still probably do 4 years in, but I struggle with that final decision. I'm always torn between things. So I just need somebody sometimes to say, oh no, that's a really good idea. Just go with it. Because I like a second opinion. And I just think that's really good though, because you can bounce ideas off each other. And I know that my deputy head, it's good for me as well, because I know she's had experience leading PE herself before in her career. So I'm going to somebody who isn't like completely unsure sort of thing, like she does know. But as I say, it could be anyone. If I was giving advice to somebody else, just finding somebody who has led a subject before. But also, I think everybody is in the same, we're all in education, we're all in the same kind of boat, in the sense that it wouldn't even take somebody who's necessarily had experience in PE to support you on just initiatives that you might be thinking of doing or ideas that you've got, but definitely seeking somebody who you think would be able to support you with it. I just think that's so good. Like, doing it everything on your own is tough, I think, especially if you struggle to make decisions like me. But yeah, just making, checking, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? Even with PA, there's a lot of events, I think, that you get signposted, they get signposted, they end up in your emails. So it's hard sometimes to know, well, which one shall we do as a school? But yeah, just checking that with somebody. What do you think of this? Because you could never go on your own anyway. If it's an outside trip, you'd need 2 members. So just having those people around you. But I think just grabbing all those kind of opportunities really has helped us this year as well. I know with COVID, the pandemic, those kind of experiences were limited, and that competition element of the PE curriculum was hard to kind of achieve. Especially with other schools outside of school. Obviously, we could still do things inside of school. But yeah, seeking all those opportunities out and really taking them if you can, providing you've got a staff member that will go with you. It's just so good for the children. Yeah, really good for the children.
Amazing. Again, it's so important having that network around.
Definitely.
You. As you said, it is tough to take it on your own shoulders, and you could get swallowed up. It is a huge subject, and people do forget that. For me, it is a core subject. It is a core subject. Now, okay, so I understand that, also to lead on PE, a lot of schools use externals to come in and help deliver PE as well. And that's just the way of life in the schools. The budgets are there to use for that particular action as well. And we're not here to name their company names, of course, but of course to help drive with PE, as well as using externals to help develop the PE in sport and physical activity here at the school. Are there any sort of best resources you've come across or CPD opportunities that has helped you and your colleagues to push that PE drive here?
So we recently sourced a resource to help with planning and delivering the PE curriculum.
Okay. Right, yeah.
So the resource was the PE Hub, but I know there are lots of other resources out there, which basically provide a tool for planning. And that's really helped our staff because we were coming from a place where, in fact, it was just the year before I picked PE up. So when I was here, but I was an NQT, teachers weren't actually delivering PE themselves because the PE ended up being their PPA planning time. So our staff did feel quite, apprehensive. Some staff didn't feel very confident about teaching some aspects of the PE curriculum. So the tool that we used was so useful, really, with just giving our staff a plan that they could either choose to then follow, adapt, they could annotate, but it just gave them that real, plan at a very basic level, but it just gave them that confidence to go with it. And we didn't say you have to follow this to a T, but it was there then for them. And we've actually kept that because I just think staff really, they've expressed how much it's helped them. And obviously we want to listen all the time, and that's part of the job, making sure that you're listening to staff as a subject lead for any area of the curriculum, because they're the ones doing the job at the end of the day, the class teachers. So yeah, we've still got that in place here now, and it's really good. It allows you to play around with the curriculum. So when you're making your activity map for how the year's going to look, it just allows you to kind of see what's in the right place, making sure it's broad and balanced. And that the children get an opportunity to do a mixture of everything, no matter what year group they're in. It's just really supported with that, really, because we've got sports in there now, like tennis, that I don't think was in there before. A bit of handball, as I say, probably wasn't in there before, but the plans are there for our teachers, and we don't, as I've mentioned previously, we don't have to follow them, but it's really helped with confidence. Yeah, definitely really help with confidence. I also think attending, for myself, the West Midlands School Sport Conference, it happens in November.
Okay, right.
And that's really good because you can book onto specific workshops that you're interested in, or you can kind of go there and dip into, whichever sort of thing, because you're going to learn a lot from all of that.
Right.
And some of the speakers are really, really knowledgeable and inspiring, actually. I've come away from those conferences the past 2 consecutive years, and I've just been like, I've had so many ideas for things to implement into our curriculum. So I loved that as well, and I look to do that next year. I know there's a lot of online things now as well that you can find a lot of online Zooms and things. So I've dipped into some of those as well. But I think just keeping up with the subject, even if it's via like social media, there's a lot of information shared, and there's always ideas that some people might have that you just didn't know. So there's definitely just always lots to learn. So as a subject lead, just keeping up with what's happening, using, people that are in the same job as you. That's really helped me. That's the other good thing about courses. If you can go face to face to these courses, that networking element, we're talking to people that you've not met before, but they're in the same job role, and it's just a case of, we do this, well, have you tried this? And you really get some good conversation. So aside from listening to the speakers and attending some of the like practical workshops, it's the networking element as well. That's really helped.
Having that face-to-face contact. I mean, I know with pandemic that we've had, many things have been cancelled. From huge gatherings to even meetings that you normally have as a face-to-face. You have to go via video calls and Zoom and other platforms that you use for video calls. And thinking about that and having that face-to-face element. So now that let's say we're out of COVID, we're never out of COVID. That's still around, but now we're in more of a face-to-face contact of getting back to some sort of whatever normal was. For CPD then, you said, for yourself or for your teachers, would you say that CPD is better or more accessible online, or would you prefer a workshop day, like coming out of school day but being a CPD day and having that face-to-face contact? Or does it really depend on the context of what a CPD is?
I would say it probably does depend on the context. However, it probably depends on what the actual CPD is in terms of the context. Like for certain things, an online course does the job. You can get what you need to get from it. You might get some interesting points and things like that. But I personally would probably lean towards the face-to-face days, especially the full day courses. I just think that it like I previously mentioned, it's that networking element, the opportunity to ask questions. I don't feel like people always feel very confident behind a screen to do that.
Have a little chat box,
and you have to unmute, and there's other people in the chat.
Cameras on.
I feel like from personal experience, I don't feel as confident behind a screen to be like unmuting myself and asking lots and lots of questions. Whereas in person, it's just easy to gauge those social situations. Like it can really relax you. You can read people's facial expressions and things like that. And it just feels more, I think, more normal and human. To talk to people. So I personally feel like I love the face-to-face, the conferences, the days of training where you can really spend you come away with so much. And I don't always find you can get that from online courses. As I say, it does depend on the context sometimes. And I have learnt things from courses that are online based, but I do really love a PE sport conference that's a full day of training.
So you'd fly the flag of if anyone who's looking to have CPD really push with those at school that can say they can have their, they can get covered with their class and they can go out and actually have that opportunity then.
Definitely. I just think it's, you can't really beat it. I think it's really good,
So you mentioned there's so many others that are in the boat that you can really bounce off as well.
Definitely. I've had some such insightful conversations with people who I've met on courses, and I've exchanged like emails with people just to kind of bounce ideas off, and I've just come away from courses like that with a lot of things, even things like rather than just, oh, that's a good idea, things I need to change and things I need to amend and things like that. Maybe it's the way the curriculum is, or how evenly weighted, just things like that. But it's good. That's a good thing. I think if you come away with things to work on, that's good. You should see it as a good thing.
Never the finished
No.
article. We're always learning. Sounds pretty cliche, but as I say, you can always do that a little bit more.
Definitely.
Maybe even reflect as well is always a good one.
Yeah.
On the CPD courses, you mentioned about having the children doing activities outside. Is there anything that you've gained from going on a CPD course or doing general research that you've put into outside activity for the children? Like, have you researched into new equipment, new games? Like, what does outside at school look like, and how have you influenced that? Doing activities on the playground and lunchtimes, things like that. Based on what you've learned, have you pushed things like children leading activities, or have you had externals come in and support that, or have you ran it yourself with the children? Have you got a school council that run it and things like that?
Yeah, so we have, through working with agencies, we've got children who now lead at lunchtimes physical activity for some of the young children, and I just think that really, the children really love it. I think they love, the ones participating, the fact that it's run by other children.
Okay.
When an adult's telling them, I don't always think it's got that same impact.
That's
and especially as it's lunchtime, it's that element of fun. And they do a really good job with it, actually. They're organised. So it helps develop their skills, I think, as leaders.
Because if we're thinking,
because if we're thinking year 5/6 sort of children who would do it, you wouldn't really go younger than that. But we would train year 5s, and they'd get their certificate to do it, and then they'd do it again in year 6. So, but it really helps them, organising, becoming independent, understanding what they need, like tidying it all away, but just those skills. So I think that as those children move through to secondary school now, they've already got those kind of communication, social skills, the skills of organising people that you don't necessarily get in a school. Often they're listening to adults, so it's giving them that ownership, really. So that's something that's come from working with agencies and attending courses.
Do you use much equipment out there on the playground? Because sometimes I think schools need, or sometimes it comes across the schools need so much equipment out there, and then suddenly you've lost 20 tennis balls in half a term, and you're like, where's the ball gone? It's on the roof.
We do. I just think you can't run as much without it, so it is needed, I think. But we do have our lunchtime supervisors who are always supervising as well, so we try and manage all the equipment so that it's not just on the children who are doing like the play leading, but it's also on the staff as well, just to keep it in check. But we're not too bad with it. I mean, we encourage the children who are doing it, if they've lost something, they need to go and retrieve it. It needs to stay, because we'll say to them, we can't run this without this. So, but I just think it really helps with behaviour as well at lunchtimes. If there's not anything necessarily to do, often children might try and make their own games, which might get out of hand then. Lunchtime is quite a long time. And boredom, I think, can lead to like fallouts.
So there's structure still to it.
Yeah.
So how do the children remember or remind themselves of what games that are best to run? Do they have anything like resources to say, we're going to do this game today? Is it done on the timetable? How does it work?
So there's a timetabled rota for the children who lead the lunchtime groups, and some groups will do it on perhaps, for example, week A, and then another set of children will do it on week B. And I think those groups communicate with each other quite well. And I know initially they're set up with a range of games they could use, but they'd then have really the ones that are most popular on like a lot more often, only because they want to encourage children to join in with them. That's the idea of it. But I think it's still nice to have the mixture, so they just rotate them really, but any that are really popular they would stick with. It's up to them really. We do want them to have the ownership, but we also want a range going on out there. So we just monitor really how many are joining in, and then they'll make because they've got that week then. They'd make any decisions for the following week during that week. But there's certain children who are really skilled at the game they're doing, so they would stick with that. I mean, they really enjoy like a shooting game in the basketball hoops. They would, because that's their strength as well, we would try and keep it. But if there's a game that nobody wants to play, that one might sort of be rotated. Yeah. Again, it's just changing it so that they're interested in it, and things like that. But that works really well here, definitely. Lunchtimes, it just means they're more fun. There's more to do. There's a choice for the children.
Choice is important.
Yeah, definitely.
And on a slightly separate note, but still involving the children, the enjoyment that they bring. And when I was at school, which is a little while ago now, my enjoyment came from having fun in the park. It came from home. It came from having the opportunities and that drive from home to say, let's go on your bike, let's do this, let's be active. Coming here, obviously, we're actually recording at Glenmead Primary School today for this podcast recording. Spoiler alert, everybody. Coming down, there's a huge community around this school. You're smack bang in the middle of all the houses, and to have that community, around you. How much over the last 3-4 years of being PE leader have you managed to involve the community into activity and physical activity that you do here at the school?
Was that involving families?
Yeah, involving families. It might be families, it might be local businesses, it might be, things to get the word out that Glenmead is this physical activity hub. Come and join in. Whether you get the parents in doing activities with the children, you might do some affairs, something where bring the community to you.
Yeah. So we've improved, I think, communication with families over the past year or so. By using, I think there's a few sort of apps and things you can get now.
Okay.
We use Class Dojo, but I think a lot of schools now have like a communication app, because it's just, we used to have like a newsletter and things like that, but now you can get messages through so much quicker, and it's like that social media, like I think some schools use Twitter for it and things like that, or Facebook page even, but you can share things that are happening, or competitions that have happened, with like photographs, like a commentary basically of the event, or if it has happened, the outcome, and so parents are much more, I'd say, aware of what is happening or has happened. And we've been able to have them on campus again. So and even if we're travelling to another school for a competition, we like to invite parents where we can, for the children who are competing. And I'd just say that even if it's parents whose children haven't competed, they're aware of what's happened, that celebration element. So we are trying to share everything that is happening, and that will happen, just so that it's, rather than it just happening and not really anybody knows about it.
So you have celebration assemblies at the end of the week?
We do, yeah.
Parents come in?
Parents don't come to celebration assembly, but photos from celebration assembly are posted again on the app. So, but the app is really good again for like getting messages. This will happen.
Is it Class Dojo?
Yeah.
We use that for my little boys.
Do you?
As well,
yeah.
That's great.
It is really good.
With the teacher of the child.
Yeah.
Obviously, they share the photos.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're all signed in. It's all secure.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point of it, isn't it? That you can say that, and they do say don't share on social media, etc.
Yeah.
Fine. But it's a great form of reaching out to the parents digitally now as well. There's so many smartphones in the world that you can have an app to do that for.
Yeah. I think people see things. Just it's much more efficient.
Yeah.
People
get to a wider audience. Quickly then.
So it's just that communication element, really. I think making sure that, and we on Class Dojo as well, there's a calendar, so you can put in events that are coming up. And then the parents have got notice there, what will be happening and things like that. So, if it's sports day and where the parents can come and watch. And
so would you put on things like if there's any, if anything happened in the school, like if anything was cancelled, like that? after school clubs or
Yeah,
things like that?
general notices,
Yeah.
we would put through. I mean, if it was that day, we'd probably send a text message because we just guarantee that everybody will see that.
Yeah,
it's more personal,
Yeah.
or even phone call. But if it's, this week, but there's something that's changed, or even just down to, you need to remember water bottles, bright PE kit for this is happening, or this workshop's happening. Sometimes we have external providers come in, like dance workshops and things that aren't. It's not just the PE lessons. There might be that extra day where they're going to need kit for this, just things like that. So just any notices, changes, and things like that. So, but it's also really nice, as I say, and as you mentioned, the celebration side of it, just so that parents who weren't there have an idea of what's going on. Scores from matches and things like that. People do really enjoy that. It's that element of sport in the school where it brings the families in, and it's like parents would like to watch sport in their own time, but it's kind of even better when it's the children's school. It's their own children. They're just they really love hearing about that. So that's a really good way of doing it.
That's good. So any PE subject leads who still hand out newsletters and anything paper based, if they haven't already, if they can at the school, depending on what school they're at, across the UK, even across the world, if they haven't gone to digital ways, that might be the next step, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, some parents, we do give parents a choice and they don't have to be on it. And then I think if some parents do still prefer that, that's okay too.
But again, you talk about efficiency, and you're not chopping down 1,000 trees to send out all these newsletters, or even e-newsletters now.
And I'd say a lot of parents do prefer it because, as you say, smartphones are in everybody's hands and they can just get messages and things instantly, and celebrate successes straight away, during the school day even. So they pick their children up and they already know what's going on. It's really good.
Do a lot of your children are you aware through the contact that you've had with the parents, do a lot of your children do local clubs or engage in local things outside of a school area?
Yeah, so that's another thing we'll celebrate. In celebration, it's not just things inside of school, but often our children will bring in certificates or trophies from things that have happened outside of school. No, definitely not. And I think that's really important because it can inspire other children to join clubs, and we'd like to signpost where we can, because the more children are doing, the better really for their holistic development. Children can bring things in. Children enjoy sharing that kind of thing. If they've had an achievement, even if it's not sport and art, sort of any achievement outside of school, where they've got a trophy or a certificate or a badge, they like bringing those in, and we'll celebrate that in Celebration Assembly too. And then that would get posted again on the app as a celebration for all the families to see, providing they're happy with that being shared. But if they bring it in, they usually are. But we also do forms for parents. We use Microsoft Forms quite a lot now. Again, it's something that's paperless, but we can promote it through the app where people will see that sort of post and they can just follow the link. And that's been really useful for me as PE lead to organise extracurricular provision. So what clubs do children want to do? What clubs do they already do outside of school? That's a question that I'd usually ask.
What's the success rate of a reply or a response? If you send out 20, what's the percentage that you actually do get back as a response?
I'd say it can vary, but I'd say over 50% of parents would. Over 50% of parents would fill the form out. I think you've just got to be selective about when you post it because you don't want to overload. Sometimes there's other forms and things for trips or things like that, but choosing a good time to do it, you can't do one every week. But it's really useful information to have, and as a sample, even if it's just a small sample, it's useful to use that information, especially for things like extracurricular clubs. I mean, if those clubs are outside of the children's school day, you want them to enjoy them. So I think it's about finding a mixture of what do they already do, what would they like to do, And even sometimes we'll ask the question like, what sports would you like to do that you don't feel like you've got access to, so that it's not, because I know a lot of our children would love a football club every night because that's what they like, but then it's just about finding that mixture, as long as it's doable as far as equipment goes, or even we could then seek an external provider, depending on the demand. It's just really useful information to have. So yeah, definitely.
So you've got all that data. So you've got the responses back from the parents. You started running the clubs. Do you track the engagement of pupils in those clubs?
Yes, we do. So we'll always keep a register. For all of the clubs, and then we'll analyse, so the attendance is recorded every week, just like it would be in a lesson. But then we'll have a look at the list of children that attended the club, and we might use it to track things like PPG children, like percentage that were send, percentage of even male and female. So then that's really another piece of really useful data to have moving forward, because then we're now looking at things like we use our assessment tracker, so this is slightly diverting from that question, but our assessment tracker in school helps us to identify children who perhaps don't really want to participate, and then we can use some time when our sports coach is in to make sure they've got those kind of skills they need. So it might be in a smaller group, it might be a focus of real, specific skills, but just making sure that they are making progress in the sport.
And so for those that aren't, and you've got those that are making progress, do you track also then what they do outside of school?
We do ask that question when we send a form out.
Different types of sports.
And I will ask that question as well when I do a pupil voice in school. So these are just ways of really monitoring how the subject is going in school and outside of school. They're things that you would use to identify your next steps, really. But so in pupil voice, I think you might get that from children who they might not have filled out the form, because that relies on a parent. So in pupil voice, you might get those children then instead, if their parent hasn't filled the form out. So it's just about having as many piece of data as possible, really,
and then using that data effectively.
You
can collect data for data's sake, and etc. So, okay, I've got two more things for you for those listeners that are literally on the edge of their seats now. One question which I sometimes spring on people is, I was also asked this when I started teaching as well. To be fair, at this stage it wasn't in relation to PE when I was asked it, but I will tweak it for this podcast, of course. With all the budgets that go out for the sports PE premium, you've got pupil premium as well budget. If money was no object, I'll start that again, everybody listening. If money was no object in PE, what would your holistic PE lesson look like? What might it include? You can go crazy, you can go full scale. If money was no object, what would you include in a PE session? That's putting you on the spot, I understand that.
I know you mentioned if money was no object, but I don't necessarily always think the money would matter.
Okay.
I just feel like was it in your ideal PE lesson?
Yeah, in your ideal PE lesson, because everyone's different.
I just feel like there'd be enough, obviously, where you mentioned money, there'd be enough equipment for everybody. Yeah. The things that you need would be there. But I think it's more on the fact that the children are joining in.
Okay.
Engaged in the lesson everybody, whether some children are doing something slightly different to somebody else, and they're all having a good time, they're all having fun. I think my ideal PE lesson, everybody's joining in, everybody's sort of smiling, and even if they're not getting something straight away, they're still enjoying that kind of challenge to do it. So just everybody being engaged, everybody being an active participant of the lesson, everybody kind of having fun, because I do think that that element, it needs to stick with children, especially at a primary school age, but even through to secondary school. It can't all be about the winners all the time, who's doing a really fantastic job. It's more about individual achievements. I think you've really improved. That's so good, because I just think that it could put children off, and I think that is in research now. If they're never they never shine, because there's always going to be children who are naturally more talented at something than others. That's always going to be the case, but it's more like everybody being willing to just have a go, enjoying themselves, willing to challenge themselves, and that kind of thing being praised. So I don't necessarily think the money. I mean, obviously there might be some really amazing equipment there, but I just think it's more about my ideal PE lesson is everybody's active, enjoying themselves, and participating, in the lesson.
Fab.
No one standing still, nobody sitting down for too long.
Good.
Just having a good lesson, achieving things that matter to them more than other people's achievements. Yeah.
That's good. I did put it on the spot. No, that's absolutely fine. One more thing then. Our listeners, we always end our podcast with a top 5. So top 5 tips, shall we say, for those who are looking to influence PE, to support them to embed like a top-down physical activity ethos that comes from the top. Sometimes you flip it on its head, actually, it needs to be driven from the children. So what top 5, if you could limit to 5, tips for those that are leading on to help them, to support them in their role? You mentioned about communication with SLT could be a tip. Make sure you have that network around you. I'm not trying to give you ideas here, but we already spoke about using the parents and community. We spoke about potentially having external things that's successful to you. But what would you say top 5 tips for those that are leading on that helped you embed things here?
So top 5 tips for embedding PE in the school.
Yes.
I would say, I think making PE exciting where possible. So I think that's more rather. Obviously, you're going to have your curriculum mapped out, but what can you do, on a termly basis or weekly basis even, that's going to add that element of excitement in. So it might be that like competition, how you're changing that, how you're celebrating it, making sure that excitement is there in some area. We do it through competitions, and then we celebrate them in assembly. But that, I think, is definitely one. Having something, the curriculum can be there, but having those initiatives going that will get the children excited. Who's going to get this week? Who's going to win this? So that element of excitement, I think, would be one.
Yeah.
I do definitely think working with other subject leaders, whether it's anybody who has experience in PE or whether it's just other subject leaders with their own subject, just to bounce ideas off them. If you can't attend courses and things, using the people around you. I do think not being afraid to ask for advice as well. Definitely. I think it's hard sometimes, especially for class teaching too, to, think what are my priorities, but asking for advice, definitely. What needs to be done now? What needs to be done next week? What needs to be done next month? So asking for advice on things like that. And then I would probably say communicating with families.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say that, because I think that's really boosted PE at our school. Where you've got competitions, where you've got anything remotely exciting happening, sharing it. I think parents really love seeing, their child achieve and congratulating others who have achieved too, and just knowing what's going on. They love watching sport. Most, do, especially if their child's involved. And just celebrating the successes of others. That's really made it like a whole school thing, I think, rather than just it's happening, but do people really know? I think once the whole community know, it becomes, sport is really happening, like it's a big thing. What's going to happen next? What's the school going to be next time? Things like that. I think I've done 4.
Yeah.
So 5.
We spoke about accountability from the children, and not to put another one in there, but about looking after the equipment, about leading on activities? Is there anything in there at all, maybe?
I think PE is
or is it just listening to the children in terms of what they want?
Well, I was thinking along those lines, to be fair, for the fifth one, definitely listening to the children, but I think PE is a really good subject where you can build in those kind of life skills, the independent skills.
Okay.
I think more so when they're sitting in a classroom,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I just think because it's the environment changes, even down to can you choose your group, or can you set this game up? Can you help me do this? It's just that accountability does shift a little bit. Because otherwise, I think as a teacher, you're doing everything all the time, and they're just kind of waiting and watching. I think it just wastes their PE lesson. I think they should be so active in it that they're doing. That they are like accountable for even down to some of the decisions that are in that lesson. The skills they might be working in PA with children who don't normally work with them. They're sitting at their desk in their classroom. So it's that opportunity for those communication, the turn taking, the fairness, the respect to really come out. So I think letting them do it is probably a tip for that. Like making sure that is present in your lessons. I know it's probably more pertinent to Key Stage 2, but I don't see why it can't be there in some ways in Key Stage 1 too, even EYFS down to where could we put this, because I just think it really helps them develop those skills that, in other areas of the curriculum, they might not be as prominent, but in PE they can really come out.
Yeah.
So allowing it to happen.
Brilliant. That's lovely. That's absolutely fabulous. And we know we've gone on such a tangent somewhere, and we come back in and we go back out and come back in with our conversation today. But there's so much in this podcast that everyone's just going to grab a little bit of. Thank you so much for your time today, Hannah. It's fantastic. So yes, so those listeners that are still with us, of course you're still with us. What am I saying? Of course you're still with us. For those listeners that are still here, thank you for listening in. Hannah's been absolutely brilliant today. And here at Glenmead Primary School, we are on all sorts of platforms, listen to your podcasts. So please pass us forward and recommend to others to listen to this particular podcast. It's been absolutely brilliant. And thank you for your time, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. Join us next time for the Primary PE Huddle podcast, and remember to subscribe wherever you access your pods so you don't miss an episode and the key gems our fantastic guests share for you. You can connect with us on Twitter or X at Aspire Sports UK and find out more about us and the family at www.aaeg.co.uk and www.aspire-ed.co.uk for PE CPD related courses and more content. Hope to see you there, and thanks for listening.